Speaking of the president, he downplayed fears of a recession in a wide-ranging interview with NBC News. We'll bring you the highlights. And the big news from the Midwest, the torch being passed at Berkshire Hathaway.
I think it's the time has arrived where Greg should become the chief executive officer of the company at year-end.
Complete coverage of Warren Buffett's big weekend in Omaha just ahead. It's Monday, May 5th. May 5th. Yesterday was May the 4th be with you. Today is Cinco de Mayo. Squawk Box begins right now.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. I'm Becky Quick along with Joe Kernan. Andrew is going to be joining us just a little later in the show. Joe's at the NASDAQ market site in Times Square, and I'm here in Omaha, Nebraska, following the Berkshire Hathaway annual shareholder meeting this weekend. We've got plenty to talk about from this weekend, but first let's take a look at where things stand this morning with the U.S. equity futures. At this hour, you will see that we are in the red. The Dow futures are down by about 264 points, S&P futures down by 43, the NASDAQ off by 181. The NASDAQ and the S&P 500 are now above where they were when President Trump announced his global tariffs early last month. The S&P is also on a 9-day winning streak. That's its longest streak in more than 20 years. Take a look at where things stand right now for the Treasury market as well. At this point, it looks like the 10-year is yielding 4.3%. You've got the 2-year at 4.28%. And then oil prices are actually lower after OPEC Plus nations agreed over the weekend to further increase output. You've got WTI this morning down another 1.33%, $57.51. Brent crude is sitting just at $60.55. And Joe, that big news here in Omaha this weekend, Warren Buffett surprising everyone just as that meeting was set to adjourn.
Greg should become the chief executive officer of the company at year-end, and I want to spring that on the directors effectively and give that as my recommendation. Let them have the time to think about what questions or what structures or anything they want. And then there's a meeting following that, which will come in a few months. We'll take action on whatever the view is of the 11 directors. I think they'll be unanimously in favor of it. And that would mean that at year-end, Greg would be the chief executive officer of Berkshire.
And that was a surprise, really, not only to all of the shareholders that had gathered, 40,000 plus. There were more than 4,000 people that had gone into overflow rooms on top of the 40,000 capacity within the stadium itself, but a surprise to all of the directors, save Buffett's two children, Susie Buffett and Howie Buffett, who he had spoken with before that. It was a surprise to Greg Abel, who afterwards, even as late as Saturday night and yesterday, was still in a little bit of shock at how this had all rolled out. To hear it live on the stage along with everyone else, it was kind of a classic Warren Buffett move, Joe. The idea that he has always treated all of these shareholders as his partners, just as when it was a very small partnership more than 60 years ago. And this was all of his partners finding out that news at the same time. I have been going to this meeting for about 21 years at this point. The crowd was bigger than I'd ever seen, and the applause that broke out, a standing ovation through the entire stadium. One person said to me later, you know, he had been to lots of rock concerts and had seen a lot of them that didn't get standing ovations like that didn't get applause like that, even for their encores. There were some tears that were shed. This is 60 years now that he's been holding these annual meetings as the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. But we can tell you a little bit of breaking news on this, too. We can report that the Berkshire Hathaway board did indeed meet yesterday, And they voted unanimously to name Greg Abel as president and CEO come January 1st of 2026. And the board also voted that Warren Buffett will remain chairman as of January 1st, too. So some of these rumors of his retirement have been greatly exaggerated. He said at the time when he was talking that he'd be sticking around. He didn't say in what capacity. And I asked him after the meeting, along with Greg, I ran backstage and asked them about that. They said they still had to talk about that. Greg was still kind of processing what had just happened. But at that board meeting yesterday, they did vote on that arrangement, and Warren Buffett will remain as chairman. He's 94 years old right now. He is by far the oldest CEO among the S&P 500. I don't think there's anybody else even in their 90s. And this is something that will happen gradually again, this transition to keep Warren Buffett around. He talked a lot this weekend, Joe, about how they have almost $350 billion in cash, and they would love to do some deals, particularly if things get interesting in the markets. So I think that's kind of what they're hoping to get out there at this point, this idea that this is the next step in the transition, but Buffett's not exactly exiting the stage. He wants Greg to be making all of those decisions. He'll have the final say on all these operating costs. I think the board is kind of hoping that he'll be there to help with capital allocation and any big potential deals that come through, but it does give Greg Abel some protection from anybody who looks and says he's not Warren Buffett.
Yeah. You knew this day was coming, obviously, and when you call it a surprise, it was a surprise the way he did it, but it wasn't a surprise to me that he decided to do that. As far as rock star reception, they have that commercial. Maybe your average CEO shouldn't really be saying that to Billy Idol, but Billy Idol, I think, would defer to Warren Buffett as the ultimate rock star. I don't think they're trying to think, maybe Jagger, I don't know. Warren definitely could counter those crazy commercials. He is obviously certainly a rock star. And you think about, these days, age of retirement, and it used to be 65, and then people said, well, 70 is a totally different age now. I don't know how it happened, but it did. I mean, we're talking someone it's going to be 25 years past the age of 70. And he's special, and he's still totally with it and everything else. But, when someone said that, he could live to 130. I'm not saying he's not going to, but even 130, what's that expression? None of us are leaving here alive. So we are getting out of here alive. So we know that it's just the way it is. It's the way life is. And I mean, he really has given Greg Abel a lot of, obviously he's learned at the feet of the master for how long now? I mean, it's been a long grooming. There's a lot of people.
It's been 26 years. I think they first met in 1999 when Buffett made that investment in Mid-American Energy. Yeah, right. So 26 years to be working with them. And look, this is something that we knew back in 2021 that Greg Abel was the chosen one, that he was going to be the next CEO because Charlie Munger slipped at the annual meeting that year. What was that, 4 years ago? Slipped and said, well, Greg will take care of the culture. And so then, Buffett told us the next day, yeah, that is the plan. We talked to Ron Olson over the weekend, a Berkshire board member until this most recent. He just stepped down from the board yesterday. But Ron Olson said that Greg had been the chosen one for years before that. So this has been a very long-term transition. Greg Abel has stepped up and taken more and more responsibility. He was vice chairman, or he is vice chairman right now, in charge of all the non-insurance companies at Berkshire Hathaway. But he's been playing a bigger and bigger role in terms of some of the capital allocation, too. He went to Japan and was the one responsible for putting this big investment in those 5 Japanese trading houses. He's got big plans with the energy company after running that, and knows about capital allocation and laying things out for big plans. For big projects. And one of the things Buffett talked about over the weekend was the idea that in this country we don't have enough energy production for the needs that are required, and that could take some help from government, the federal government, to do things that we would normally only do in wartime, where you have 50 different states and lots of local jurisdictions that all have their own rules, and it's pretty tough to get any new electric grids kind of passed through all of those various regulatory overhangs. I think he was calling for potential of the government to work with a private partnership with industry too, and they could put some of that cash to work doing that. They've got $350 billion, a lot they'd like to spend it on. But Greg Abel is 62 years old. Your point is 65 used to be the point of retirement.
Yeah.
They are looking at Greg Abel as having decades still, hopefully, to run Berkshire. That's kind of the way they look at things around here.
Yeah, that's what I was, Yeah, you're going to be CEO. You just got 26 years to wait, and you'll be 62 years old when you finally ascend to the position. It's all different than you. So that was my take when I heard it. I don't know. I said, oh, that he's passing the baton finally, and it wasn't as earth-shattering. But the way he did it was obviously you were there, and it must have been classic Warren Buffett. The way that it was done, without even his
he did
board.
it on his terms.
Yeah,
without his board even. He did it on his terms, and I think it was. The more I thought about it afterwards, the more brilliant I thought it was. He did it after just holding court in front of tens of thousands.
Yeah, even at the end of the
that
whole
was just
thing.
live. Yeah, at the end of the whole thing, after doing question and answer for hours, for more than 4 hours. Taking this Q&A totally unscripted and running with it and proving to the world that, he's still got it. He's still all there mentally. And being able to answer all of those questions and talk kind of forever about all of these issues. I think he would have gone for longer. I do want to tell you about a couple of things that happened at the annual meeting before that. Buffett did go on to explain that he doesn't intend to leave the company entirely.
I could be helpful, I believe, in that, in certain respects, if we ran into periods of great opportunity or anything, I think that Berkshire has a special reputation that when there's times of trouble for the government, that we are an asset and not a liability, which is a position that's very hard to have because usually the public and government get very negative on business if there's a time like that. But so I think there might be a time when I'd be helpful, but Greg would have the tickets, and he would make, like I said, whether it's acquisitions, I think the board would be more welcome to giving him more authority on large acquisitions, probably if they knew I was around. But he would be the chief executive, period.
Buffett also made sure to tell shareholders that he will not be selling his shares.
I have no intention, zero, of selling one share of Berkshire Hathaway. It'll get given away gradually. I would add this. The decision to keep every share is an economic decision because I think the prospects of Berkshire will be better under Greg's management than mine.
And Joe, a lot of reaction to Warren Buffett's announcements coming in from all over the business world. I got something from Apple CEO Tim Cook last night. He was here for the meeting, and Buffett heaped a lot of praise on Tim Cook, saying that Tim Cook had made more money for Berkshire shareholders than Warren himself ever did. This is what Tim Cook had to say. He said, "Warren's a singular figure, and it has been one of the great honors of my life to know him and to learn from him. He has the rarest of combinations, towering leadership and genuine humility, and he does it all with great humor and even greater generosity. His commitment to others and to making the world a better place are an example for us all. Warren's truly one of the wisest men to have ever walked the earth, and I always look forward to the next time I get to talk to him." You can roll over some of the other comments that came in from people like Jamie Dimon and Brian Moynihan, obviously all of them kind of reaching out. And there's been a lot of reflection in just how far they've come and what he's been able to do over 60 years. I saw a statistic, I think it was from the Motley Fool, that talked about how much of his wealth was it? I think 96% of his net worth was accumulated after his 65th birthday, and that goes to speak to the power of compound interest. And some of his best comments, Joe, I think over the weekend, just in terms of calming investors and the markets, talking about, if you thought April was a big volatile month and a drop of 15% in your stock prices, then you probably don't have the right mental attitude for being an investor. That 15% was nothing to him. You're down by, at this point, those stocks are up from where they were on Liberation Day. And he pointed out that he's seen Berkshire Hathaway shares decline by more than 50% in their value over 3 points over the last 60 years since he took over. And at no time was the company's fortune really substantially changed. So, you ain't seen nothing yet. And this is all just been average garden variety type stuff we've seen to this point.
Well, you obviously have spent a lot more time with him than I have, but I know him pretty well, and I would hear from him. And every time I've ever heard from him, it's always like it's this impish, humorous, sardonic. Whatever he's ever done with me has always been needling back and forth. He'll send me I'll say, send me some. He sends me a brick name on it, or a Nets card that's useless because there's nothing on it, or. And you've seen pictures with him. When my wife, we were sitting next to him, and the pictures of him where he's like holding his wallet, trying not to let someone. He's what he's like. He's always been like that. He had do you speak French? Schwad, whatever, however you say it. He had a love for life, and he still does. I'm sounding like all he's doing is retiring. He's not going anywhere, but
he's not retiring. He's stepping down from the CEO role, but he's still planning on going to the office every day.
But I'm saying but he's just really. I don't think I've ever had a conversation that wasn't like sort of laced with humor or needling or something like that. It's really funny.
That's why you get along with him so well.
Yes. And basketball, when we talk about the final, and he's like, why don't you try it? And I tell him, $1 million? How about $1 billion? It's not going to happen. No one's going to get it. And $1 billion, you wouldn't even notice if you did do $1 billion for. Right.
Can I just say on that point, he does think they're far more likely to get a winner. And again, his actuarial brain always would work on this. But because of the changes that we've seen with NIL and with the players sticking around for the best teams, he thinks it's far more likely that you will see a winner.
Someone could get all six.
Somebody could get it. It was all the Final Four this year was all first-place teams.
No, I know.
They literally are changing the odds on how you can win.
What do you need? You have to get every single thing all the way through the entire tournament, don't you?
No. What were somebody won it this year by getting, or maybe.
Yeah,
maybe
I think he relaxed that a little bit. Well, that's good. Okay.
32 out of 34. Yeah, 32 out of 34. And I had a conversation with him earlier this year, and he does think that you are the odds have changed. You are far more likely to be able to get this than you were 10 years ago.
He's classic, though. I think even on what he has to pay, he's got insurance. Of course, he's got plenty of insurance companies, too, right?
I think he's self-insured at Berkshire, right?
No, he's a character. He's always been, he's just a pleasure, obviously, in so many ways. But what are you going to do? It's 94. God bless him. Let's all hope I hope I make it past him in terms of retirement. That's my plan. Coming up,
somebody asked him, Joe, what he wanted to be known for, because in the past he's always said he wanted to be known as a teacher. Somebody asked him about that, one of the shareholders this weekend, and his reply was, I want to be known for being very old, for old age.
He said that on his tombstone or something too. That's what or someone said that. He lived to be really, 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 really old or something, and obviously. He's doing it. Coming up, much more on Warren Buffett and the passing of the torch at Berkshire Hathaway. We're going to speak with a Berkshire analyst. But next, Fun Strats Tom Lee joins us on the market week ahead. Stay tuned. You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC.